Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to welcome you to our community tonight. Please note that this webinar is being distributed and live streamed by virtually joining this webinar. You give your consent to be recorded and distributed by Simeon Morrow Public Speaking and Presentations, Vienna Live with Simeon Morrow, and other third parties. If you prefer to not be recorded, please turn off your camera and microphone, and/or go to the Facebook Live video feed, the link to which I'll now place in the chat room. For a better experience, please turn off your microphone and set your video to gallery view. This show thrives on participant contributions, and all participants are encouraged to actively participate in this webinar by making comments, asking questions. To do so, please either write in the chat room, raise your hand to say hi, or turn on your microphone, and I'll be delighted to include your perspective in the conversation. Tonight, our featured guest is Christine Jensen, a saxophonist and composer. Her latest album, Day Moon, is the subject of tonight's conversation. Christine, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Simeon.
So, Christine, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you first got into music and eventually making your way to become a renowned jazz composer, conductor, saxophonist, et cetera, et cetera.
I think music was in my blood, basically, because my mother was a pianist she was a pianist and a teacher and a lover of just beautiful melody and harmony. So we had that in our house all the time. And I have two older sisters, and they are both musicians. One has become exceptionally renowned out of New York City, and her name's Jensen on trumpet. And between growing up as a child and just kind of being in my own world with piano lessons, I eventually transitioned to saxophone at around 12, and that became sort of more of an extension of my voice that I worked on and still work on today, trying to find it.
Okay, and tell us, so Christina, a little bit about the new album, Day Moon. It's a quartet setting, so I was kind of surprised that when you actually told me, well, this is rare for me to do something like this where I highlight my own playing. Most of the time I'm writing for other musicians. So tell us a little bit about this whole story of this quartet. So you on saxophone, then you've got pianist, double bassist, and drummer, so the most conventional quartet setting there is. So tell us about creating that and what made you do it.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on the west coast of Canada, right on Vancouver Island, actually. So it's kind of an interesting place because a lot of musicians do a lot of different things just because of the space we're in is so far to get from point A to point B compared to city space. And I think we all learn different skills and different instruments. So that was a starting point for me, never really just doing one thing. And that led to myself going to McGill University and taking the jazz program there on saxophone, which was a definite discipline move for me. And out of that, I started composition classes, and that's when a composition voice was found, I guess, or somehow unearthed. And that led me to a lot of people kind of saying, including my sister, going, wow, that's a great piece. I want to record that, or I want to play that. And can you do something else with that? Would you like to arrange that? And it just kept spinning and spinning out. It's like spinning universes off of me. And meanwhile, I still, I love the act of playing in a small group and being able to improvise. So to find a balance is just my life quest, I think, with this music and with the work I'm doing. But at the same time, when I do put a lot of my energy into something, if I say yes and it happens to be large ensemble, that's going to be a lot of time spent by myself working on that. So it takes away from that other idea of small group and playing. And maybe the pandemic was a lucky time for me with that, because that led me back into being by myself with my instrument to the point of adding another person and another person and another person. And that's what this album is about.
Okay, let's have a listen. So this is Day Moon, the title track. Okay, so Christine, tell us about this. Wow, yeah, tell us about making this composition and why someone like your sister would say, "Give me an orchestration of that. I want more. I want an arrangement." Tell us a little bit about this.
That could happen. It hasn't happened yet. I do listen to that form. I like it. It's got because it has a lot of contrast to it, yet it has a drive through the whole thing. So in that process, I guess I was just really in a, if you look at it harmonically, it's an Aeolian place in modal harmony, and then I just kind of go to a kind of more happy major place, which to me is much like the moon and the sun. The moon is my Aeolian kind of, I don't know, astrological event, and then the sun is this bright, happy place. So we spend quite a bit of time with the moon before we get to the sun. And the whole premise of this piece was I saw just outside my door here in Montreal, I was standing in the middle of the street in the no, before the pandemic. This is the prelude to the pandemic. And it was just a really eerie thing coming out of Star Trek or something, where I was looking at two celestial bodies, or two, two planets, the sun not being a planet but a star, the sun and the star, and just going, or sorry, the moon and the star, and just going, these are so even right now, and yet the moon was kind of giving me the pull. So there's a lot more on that side of the piece to it. That, but it's a day moon, like it was in the, I think it might have been in the morning, late morning.
And Christine, would you be able to maybe play some of these chords? I mean, the way I'm looking at it right now, we're looking at the
Right.
score. You can tell it's got this kind of
Yeah,
trance-like going between these tonic and dominant chords.
yeah, that flat six is a big step for me too. So there's lots of ways to label this chord, but I want the priority to be the flat six, which is in the bass line. So it's just that sound. And then all I do is I modulate it up to that A minor on the third system.
And Christine, maybe could you put your Zoom
Oh,
on the music mode?
I forgot. I'm sorry. Oh, there we go. Can you still hear me talk?
I can hear just fine. So maybe you can play the first 8 measures,
Yeah.
or 12.
Going back to it. And then it's just a strict modulation up a major third. There I am, but it kind of feels lighter, right? Like the moon is rising. There's a lot of voice leading in there too. I mean, I'm a big fan of Bach. I played a lot of Bach as a kid. So I'm even on the piano, I'm barely moving between my inner parts, or my voice leading of the inner parts. And then it just does a repetition. The other thing about this piece, if you look at, I gave you 3 pages, I'm actually using the entire distance of, not the entire, but most of the distance of the alto saxophone range. So you hear it kind of building up through the melody. That's why I have to lay it out this way, because the melody keeps changing, but the chord, or the structure of the composition doesn't harmonically change that much to a certain point. But I have to keep repeating the harmonic system and add new variations to the melody. So it's really like classical music, honestly.
And I noticed there these last excuse me, what is it,
Yeah.
the penultimate 8 measures, that the band really likes playing that when you go into this duple measure. Maybe you can play that for us.
Well, I'll go back to letter C for a second, because that's
Sure.
when what did we do? And then I go here, which is still the same, Aeolian system. It's funny how you move bass lines around, and they give you a structure as well of going darker or brighter. Now I'm going to open it up. This is the sun coming out, right? This is my favorite Jobim chord right there. You can hear that. And then we get to what you were just talking about there. That's a sus chord. And in sus, if we keep sus's pedaling for a while, there's a real forward motion to it. So then we can fall back to the form. And that's the big form just looping around. But it's definitely going 2/3 moon and 1/3 sun taking over.
Wow. And how did you rehearse
Oh,
this whole piece with the band?
I had before this, I did another version of this with my cordless quartet, which we had recorded this piece literally a week before the pandemic. So I'd written the piece a few weeks before, and we went in. It was just trumpet and saxophone, but and it's a great recording too. It's got a whole different space to it, but still the same energy. But I really wanted to hear, especially this collaborator I'm working with, Steve Amirho, who's in Montreal. He's just a beautiful musician of melody and gorgeous harmonic structure, which we didn't have with the cordless quartet. So it was really fun to work on it with him, with with this idea. So
And
yeah, it was rearranged a little bit, but the form was there. We don't spend a lot of time. I mean, the goal of smaller group for me, especially, is that I don't have these huge amounts of pages of variation and change up on things. We're just gonna hang out in a mood and develop it, hopefully through the improvisations.
Christine, in a little bit, we're going to get to your new work as a professor of jazz studies at Eastman. But first, just out of curiosity, coming from a contemporary music background that I do, I'm wondering, why is it that you are and other jazz people are so into harmony, and in classical music, in the contemporary music world, they seem to have done away with harmony as we know it? Why is that? Why are jazz people so like those sounds that seem to have the relevance of
Yeah.
modernity that classical music seems to not have?
I mean, jazz is a wide range of genre mixing within it, right? Because I'm out for some people and I'm too in for other people. Do you know what I mean? I'm caught in the middle in a way. The contemporary, I guess, and contemporary harmony's over. We've done everything we can within an octave. Do you know what I mean? I, I don't know if there's much else to do within an octave that we haven't done already. I think Messiaen is a great example of pushing it a little further, and then Schoenberg with 12-tone row, sure, but we're still dealing with anytime two notes come together, we have harmony, right? So it's a discussion. It's a very big philosophical discussion in my life, and I would like to embrace a lot more of contemporary classical for this reason. I have a lot of jazz musician composers that do embrace that, and it's like harmony's over. We're working on other stuff now. You know what I mean? But I am a romantic. I think maybe Ravel's where I stop, and if I put it in classical terms, and what he did with a few pieces always have impacted me in that whole stripping it down to harmonic analysis, which is part of it. But jazz is harmony, rhythm, and melody and form. Those are the four things I've gotten it down to, and any of those things, you can play with and shape around them. Just take one of them out and work with the other three, and you'll come up with something.
Well,
So harmony is an easy one to pick
I'm
out.
sure I speak for many when I say keep doing what you're doing, man.
Oh, thanks.
So let's listen. Now I'd like for us to go on to listen to another piece from the album, and this is called Lined. So let me see if I can put this up here. Fantastic. So, Christine, here, I'm reminded of what you said about studying Bach when you were younger. I hear this Largo
Yeah, if I
ostinato
could put a
influence.
word on it,
Tell us
Largo
about
would be
this.
the name. That's called line, but I think I actually wrote the word Largo. No, I wrote Adagio on it. Should have gone Largo. Uh, it's so much easier to name things after tempos. But lined is exactly. It's funny. I've never made an album. I mean, I've made some albums, but this one is such um, a mindset for me to listen to. I know exactly the feeling I had at the time that I was trying to get out of. I'm not trying to capture it even. I'm just trying to work through it, which was the idea of when the lockdown first started, everything was a line. Like every step of everything we did when it came to leaving our house was get in line, get lined. You are lined. There's a space in the line. All these things, stay in line. You know what I mean? That was never there before. And I found it a little bit jarring and scarring in a way. So I would just try to work out that mood and that piece of the sort of sadness I felt for those who maybe had a harder time than those who had an easier time. I don't know how to describe it, but it was like it didn't matter when it came to doing something. You might just have to stand in line just like everyone else and go through the process of what we were in.
Oh,
Does that
wow.
capture it a little bit? I don't know.
Wow.
It's a little dark in a way, but yeah, we don't do that now so much. I mean, there's other lines, but it's not the same. There are more choices. These were not choices. It's like, man, I have to go get my milk for my breakfast. I'm going to go outside and stand in a line and be 6 feet apart or whatever it was and hope for the best. Just getting milk
Sure. I
for
remember
everyone.
too. I remember too
Yeah.
standing in line for the COVID testing before we had the vaccines and everything. It
Yeah,
was
although
such
that line, that was a big line for me. Yeah, there's a lot of descriptions of lines I could think of. Even just going for a walk, you nearly had to watch out depending how many people were around you. So that's that story on that song. And I wanted that trudgy feeling of a big sigh, like this is where we're at.
wow.
No choice.
Very powerful. Okay, let's listen to another piece from the same suite. This is called the Quiescence Suite. So here
Oh,
is
quiescence, yeah.
Quiescence,
Quiescence.
excuse me.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know how to pronounce it.
My-
But it was that feeling of the solitary state, yet things were functioning around us. But yeah, that's what that whole
So
suite is.
here we have, I'm going to share now. This is called the 2020 Blues.
2020 blues. What I had.
Fantastic. Christine, now we're going to move on to your work for large ensembles. So as we said at the beginning, this solo quartet album, I should say, where the focus is on you as the band leader, front woman, that's kind of an outlier in the rest of your work. Normally you were writing arrangements for your sister, doing all those kind of things. So tell us a little bit about, you started taking these courses in composition at McGill. Clearly you had this talent for not only writing these scores and arranging them, but for working with other people. So tell us a little bit about, we're gonna now watch, it's called the Christine Jensen Jazz Orchestra. Tell us a little bit about that orchestra and about how you got there from just studying saxophone.
Oh boy, another big question. It was just little steps, I guess. The little steps being writing these simple forms or maybe more complex forms, but just down to, again, the melody, the harmony, and the form, and then taking it the next step, which is again going back more into classical composition and the masters who did this music, like Duke Ellington and I would say one of my favorites is Thad Jones. The way they were able to develop form and do kind of what Beethoven did, which was heading into primary themes and secondary themes in the development. So in the small group, the development happens just through the improvisation. So now I have to add another chunk of development before leading up to that or after it. So it was, to me, it's just a really fun, it's a fun game, I guess, of telling a story and laying it out a different way, and also thinking about 18 musicians, which, just like in symphonic works, they have to think about their entire community when they're composing in that style. It's the same thing for a big band. We have sections, and we can do a lot of different things with each section, and we can also cross over into sections. So this all became really fun for me, and I think some inspirations for me have been, especially aside from those that I mentioned, also some Canadian composers like Rob McConnell. The repertoire I played as a student in big bands in school, like Bill Holman, who I didn't appreciate until much later, but I played his lines. So I think that got, everything I touched as a player got into me as a composer. Eventually Maria Schneider and her orchestra have been a very big effect on me. Charlie Hayden and the Liberation Orchestra were another interesting sound to me. So I was like, how can I get more people involved? And there's some steps you take, like someone says, oh, your assignment this week is to write a big band chart, and I can tell you I did some pretty bad assignments leading up to it, but I wanted to keep trying to refine my skills, as well as develop my own voice with the music on all accounts.
And Christine, when you say a bad score, what does that mean exactly?
Oh, probably bad layout, probably hard to read, probably not well thought out in the process. Although one of my earlier works is on an album and it is very popular amongst many high school and colleges that can play it, which is called Vernal Suite. Just trying to develop things so that there's a connection through these big sections that I'm talking about, and also understanding range, especially of what instruments can do, and the extremes and the sort of beauty of certain aspects of the sections when they come together. So you can't do it in one chart. It takes a lot of time in one sort of crack at it. It's like, are you just going to write a novel and that's it? You got to start with some poetry and some short stories first. So that's kind of what got me there.
Fantastic. Let's have a listen. This is the Christine Jensen Jazz Orchestra. Fantastic. So, Christine, tell us a little bit about this composition that's clearly outside the pandemic. That was
Oh gosh.
it's really upbeat, lots of those strident horn sounds. Tell us about writing this piece.
That piece sort of came from nothing. That's one of the commissions I've done over the years, that university commissioned me to write something for a certain thing they were doing. And one of the things they were doing was bringing my sister and myself in to play as guest artists, as well as me doing the commission. So that's called Tree Lines. And it was, like I said, coming out of nothing meant I started on C and I wrote a tone row just off of that. I don't think it was a full tone row, but it was something that just gave me a start with intervals. It's kind of where I get into more intervallic ideas through the melodies than anything else. And then I just start to use harmony afterward underneath it all. It might be vertical or it might be a little more horizontal. But the premise was to just have this, I don't know, this dialogue between the soloist and the band a lot. So if you hear it continue on, and it's also very episodic in breaking down to freer sections and then starting up with a new tempo. So it goes through a few emotions through the meter, actually, more so than anything else.
And Christine, so you're conducting it and then you're playing as a soloist. How do you hold it all together?
It's funny watching that. I haven't seen that. Usually my sister is playing the trumpet part. She was unavailable for that concert in Bremen, Germany, where I brought the entire orchestra from Montreal over. And I was like, okay. And also the pianist on that is an amazing composer named Maggie Olin out of Malmo, Sweden, who writes all sorts of different ensembles, and also sometimes with vocalists with lyrics. She's just a beautiful composer and player. So I put her in there too. I was like, I'm not going to bring a piano player from Canada. I'm going to work with my friend Maggie, who knows what I like. So I put her in there, and it's just, yeah, it's fun. Like if the band is really happening, and this band is really happening, they knew what was going on. I actually felt like I did a tour shortly after that. I think I did a Canadian tour because I did this Germany thing. I ended up with a Canadian tour with that exact ensemble you see with my sister. And there was a point where I was like, I don't even need to conduct. I can just play. So I just started to improvise over everything by the end of our tour, because there was no need for me to do much. They had it all happening, and it was a really beautiful ensemble to work with. And we've just gone back in to do another recording. So that's what will come up next.
Fantastic. So now we're going to take a look at another group. This is Orchestre National de Jazz de Montréal. So we're going to have a look at this big band composition, which I believe is now going to be forthcoming on a new album.
Yeah, you'll hear the musicians you just saw mixed with some of the musicians from here.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So tell us about composing this swirl around.
Oh, this is one. I mean, I have a bit of fluidity in and out of writing things for smaller group to larger group, or sometimes it's only larger ensemble. But in this case, this was a smaller ensemble sketch, which well, I did record on the album Infinitude with my sister in a quintet. So, and in fact, I recorded it in a tentet before that with my friend Maggie in Sweden. We had an ensemble called Transatlantic Conversations that we put together and recorded in Stockholm. So that this is just a an expansion on the orchestration a little bit, just adding more horns. But so it's a little bit universal is what I'm trying to say. And um that's how this one came about. And I kind of have more of a timbre idea with it. It's really about this sort of rock and roll beat with horns over it. To me, it's very. I want to take some Beatles music and arrange it sometimes, but that's my version. It's swirl around. It had lyrics originally, and that's what's on the Transatlantic. This beautiful singer sings them, and I actually wrote the lyrics and everything for it. So it's not necessarily me on soprano saxophone playing the melody all the time. It can be a lot of different variations.
And tell us, Ingrid, excuse me, Christine, what are the lyrics about then?
Oh, it's just about this idea. I think there's a French painter that's painted it. Or even you can imagine Mary Poppins when she gets on the umbrella and she just starts rising off the ground into the sky, and you're swirling around and dancing with someone. So it was like swirl around with me kind of thing. We're just in this kind of ethereal place off of the earth dancing. Could be over the ocean, or it could be through clouds, or it could be, off of rooftops, anything. It's just this idea of standing or dancing in a space that is got nothing underneath you, and that you're just together in a moment.
Wow. And how do you philosophically combine that with the rock beat and the heavy, the
Well, I
heavy?
think that again we go back to tempo, right? It's got this real dirgy, kind of dirty dance with me kind of thing. Maybe David Bowie's part of it. I don't know. It's just like swirl around, and you're just going around and around, and you're just dancing through this real. It's a toe tapping beat in a way. Like there's a lot of subdivision in it too.
And the musicians, how did they respond? You can tell that the trombonist is completely into it.
Oh yeah, they want to have. It really we should have euphonium and tuba on this one actually, and more French horn and things like that. I could hear it. Definitely would augment that Lord type of brass sound that I'm kind of digging for.
Fantastic. So let's go on to our next subject, which is your work at Eastman School of Music. So I understand that they have a legendary jazz program, and
Bill.
that you have recently become a professor of jazz for jazz studies and contemporary media. Tell us about this and why this is such an important building block of your career.
Oh, my career, and hopefully the destiny of where the music sort of launches off to the next level. Eastman, as you can see, is a very it's all guys. It's all guys in that picture. It's a place where I think a lot of change is going to happen for the future, and where the music will step into the future a little more than being put in the sort of institutional setting of the past. And Eastman is a great place of where we can find a balance between learning from the tradition and also moving forward with contemporary sounds. And a lot of great composers and arrangers have come off of this program that are making waves in uh, small and large ensemble performance in this music. So when the job came up, and there's not very many of these jobs out there in the world, but this one had me ticking off a lot of boxes of what I love to do, which is to have a studio of young musicians that I can help guide a little bit as much as I can through the process of composition and arranging, as well as running the Eastman Jazz Ensemble, which is a really cool, beautiful band to work with. I mean, it's as close to professional as it gets, I think, in out there in the world. So I get to curate a lot of music and bring in guest artists that I think will suit their needs and in growth. And also just I'm sure in classical it's the same. I think it's changing a lot, but this this image of what the music is has been very male dominated. So this school in particular needed a face change so that we do attract more varied, um, inclusive body of students, especially into the program. So I'm the first female hire of that department ever.
So, Christine, so you bring me to the next point, which is that in academic circles today, from I think it's been going on for maybe a decade, but now the gender studies is very, very pronounced. It's very, very important. And the idea of the studies is important because they believe that as many different perspectives as you can get makes for better scholarship, and that a man per se doesn't have the same perspective as a woman, or people of different income levels don't have the same perspective, and that to get the best, widest perspective, in other words, that there's not just one way, there's not just one truth, but it depends on your perspective. And in order to get that perspective, you need to go speak with different kinds of people. Tell us, why is that important then, that that you say that Eastman needs to have, that more women should be included, since the band, as you said, already became so famous, it's been legendary.
Yeah.
Tell us why is that important, and tell us about also your struggles. The description of this show was serendipitously about how women should be able to play the blues, but it's kind of difficult to imagine. So
Well, the blues is a conversation on its own. I mean, it's America's music, and it should be celebrated at especially through the academic level. Like, why are we learning jazz? Why are we becoming this kind of copy of one another? And how do you break the sort of code of the copy? And I think it wasn't just Eastman, it's everywhere I've been. It's been slow to change, and for some reason, especially at the upper echelons of jazz performance, and this is not including vocalists, but everything else, it is very male dominated still, and it's a culture that, if we don't have this culture get the other points of view into it, it's going to just stay where it is. And unfortunately, um, we may lose the audience. We may lose a bunch of things if we don't start really trying to nurture these younger musicians. In the first place, musicians get access to music is through teaching and the teachers they have. And I think there's a lot more at the beginning, but then it thins out as it progresses. And I do think it's the mentality of the workplace too, whether it's the performance workplace or the academic workplace. The demands are high on your time and the time allotment of the day, which is actually not the day, it's the evening and the weekend, and all these things factor into why would a young woman want to do this when they probably will want to start a family. And it's not even, it is not equal. I guarantee you it's not. And this is a place that really wanted to tell me that they're willing to start making new choices on how these things will affect it, so that we do get a broader body in the school.
And what's your message to other, I mean, I want to say that I get the impression that you have really met with success at most of the steps of your career. You and your sister are highly accomplished, and you were trained by this generation of where there was only men, I imagine. So tell us, what do
Yeah.
you say to the young women who are facing that kind of prejudice or facing those kind of hurdles to have their voices heard? They're met with uh, um, derision. What is your message to them? How can they succeed? What
Oh,
should
to
they do?
seek, I think they have to seek out what they're missing, and hopefully even I think mentorship comes from anywhere. So I had a lot of mostly male teachers in my life, especially in jazz. And I think not all of them were that conscious of, like, a lot of them were like, why would you want to do this? My daughter's going to do something else. You will not be, you get some attitudes, let me tell you, through it all. But not everyone, everyone is going to carry a different point of view on this. Um, but I think really just getting mentorship is a big one. There's a lot more resources now. We can't change the image of the past that maybe had some hidden figures that are hard to find, but we do have to seek out those hidden figures like Mary Lou Williams and Carla Bley and all these amazing women that have actually left a great body of work that maybe isn't being played in the institution. Well, guess what? Now I'm going to bring that into the institution. You know what I mean? And then at the same time, make sure that all the high school teachers out there know I'm there, and that we want to work with everyone. So, and if there's someone that shows like a lot of potential, I don't like to say talent, but their talent may not be nurtured well enough. Maybe we have to find a lot more of this mentorship or teaching. I have so many students at McGill I taught that study with me because they just wanted to study with a woman. It was an entire male faculty for the most part up until a few years ago. So
Wow. But
it's an interesting world. I mean, pick up a magazine and even that's changing now. It's really good. Everyone has a different uh, outlook on how to present things, whether it's the journalists or the media or the producers or the concert promoters or everyone, I think, has a new agenda to recover what we've maybe lost. So
but you're hopeful.
I'm pretty hopeful. I think that other thing you said is concerning though, which is money. The type of Eastman is not a cheap school to go to, so we can't. It's not like the European system where everybody gets equal opportunity, and it's all because of income. So combine those two things, and those are big challenges still.
Well, we know that now we'll be able to contact you. I'll show people your contact and continue the conversation at another time. But we're going to check in, and at that time we're waiting to hear about all of your future successes with all of your orchestras and
Oh, thanks.
and ensembles and your work at Eastman. So let's see how we can stay in touch. We have here, first of all, the Day Moon. Here is how you can buy it at
Oh, right
justin-time.com,
there.
and it's $15. It's very easy to buy. So that's how you can buy that. I'm going to put that in the chat room right there. And let's see how we can stay in touch with Christine. There is her
That's
website,
under construction, but yes, we're getting a new one
Christine
soon.
JensenMusic.com. And Christine, for people to reach out to you about all of the topics we've discussed today, they just go to info.
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah.
Perfect. And they can
Oh
write you an
wow, there's
email.
even MySpace on there. That has to go. It's all going. I'm getting it revamped in the next month, so I'm excited about that too.
Okay, great. And so anyways,
Yeah.
feel free to reach out to Christine if you have any questions. As she said, some people don't feel comfortable speaking to men about these things. Christine is there to hear your questions, answer your questions, hear your comments. So again, that is ChristineJensenMusic.com. Feel free to reach out to her. Thank you so very much to Professor Christine Jensen.
Oh, thanks.
So let's see what's coming up next week on Vienna Live. We have here Here it comes. We have Henry at Work Thoreau on Making a Living, written by John Cagg. John Cagg will be our guest, and he's going to tell us about why sometimes resigning from your work for whatever reason, be it because you're not good at it, or you have health problems, or you don't believe in it, or you'd like to do something else, why that is a great decision to make. So Henry David Thoreau on Making a Living, that's John Cagg next Wednesday. As always, all information about upcoming shows may be found at www.seemingmorrow.com. Once again, thank you so very much to Professor Christine Jensen. Thank you very much to Frederick and Victoria Mulligan for this, as well as Agnieszka and Benoit Rivolet for their support of this show. Most of all, thanks to you, our participants who make it all worthwhile. From New London, New Hampshire, and Montreal, Canada, goodbye, and see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.